prestige has declined, although in terms of its military positioning, in terms of a vast array of bases in the area, that is still the case. But I really think that the kind of unilateral power that the U.S. was able to wield in areas like East Asia is a thing of the past.
The flooding in the Philippines, Walden Bello, the issue of global warming as we move in on the climate change conference that will be happening in Copenhagen, this global summit that will be taking place?
Yes, well, the Philippines is definitely one of the victims of climate change. I think this recent series of typhoons this year, which have been becoming very fierce, climatic changes, I think a number of studies have confirmed that the Philippines is one of those that will be greatly affected, which is why we do have a stake in a successful outcome to the negotiations in Copenhagen. At the same time, personally, I am quite not very hopeful that there will be a new phase of the Kyoto Agreement that will be successfully negotiated because the United States is the biggest bloc at this point. It is not, really willing to name a cut that they would propose for greenhouse gas emissions because the Obama administration is basically saying it's got to wait for the Senate to be able to approve a greenhouse gas emissions law in the U.S. So I think that I will be going to Copenhagen, and I think it would be, this global deal on two things. One is mandatory cuts in global greenhouse gas emissions on the part of the rich countries, and second, real firm commitments to provide financial assistance to developing countries for them to be able to adapt to climate change. My worry is that Copenhagen is not, in fact, going to produce agreements here. And if it doesn't produce agreements here, I think we all are in a very difficult situation because climate change has been accelerating. So we in the Philippines can only really hope that the industrialized countries will come to their senses and having been the principal really responsible for the accumulation of greenhouse gases, to really take the bold steps in agreeing to cuts in mandatory cuts in greenhouse gas emissions. And the U.S. really, under the Obama administration, has a historic responsibility to put itself on the line on this one.
Well, Walden Bello, I want to thank you very much for joining us. Walden Bello is a representative in the Philippines Congress. He's also analyst with the focus on the Global South and a professor at the University of the Philippines, speaking to us from Manila. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. We'll be back in a minute.
There's nothing left to do but sing. There's nothing left to do but sing. There's nothing left to do but sing. I woke up this morning and my soul crawled up my skin and whispered in my ear, the revolution starts within, but without justice in this world, my poetry seems paper thin. Like, how we gonna enlighten when we watch our children dying? And how you gonna fight the man if you're fighting to survive? And how we gonna find the truth when all we know is lies? And all we know about standing up for life and seeing fallen angels, spirits rising. And why then do we need another goddamn poem about revolution? Somewhere in the world, the girl is counting stars and grains of rice and praying hard to save her life in pain and strife. The only cards she had to play with And somewhere in Haiti, a mother's counting her dead children. And somewhere in New England, another's counting multi-millions. Somewhere in Chicago, a broken soul goes old in prison. And somewhere in Colombia, the land's too poisonous to live in. And people live there. And somewhere in the world, landmines and pipelines, crack pipes and high-rises circumvent the land like lines, designing palms of hands, printing futures we will never understand. Until our ancestors become our children. And somewhere in Africa, someone's listening to God through television and praying to paper dolls and holy gods draped in white skin with eyes.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. We are on the road in Seattle, Washington. Today I'll be at Seattle Airport signing books at the bookshop if anyone's traveling, the most busy day of the year, and then headed on to see folks in Vancouver and also in Victoria. Then we'll be back at Seattle Town Hall on Friday night. On Saturday, we'll be celebrating community radio in Everett, Washington, then moving on to Boulder, Colorado for an evening event. On Sunday, we'll be in Minneapolis celebrating community radio. On Monday in Washington, D.C. And on Tuesday, we'll be at the Philadelphia Free Library. On Wednesday, back in New York. On Friday, the Democracy Now! Team heads to Copenhagen to cover the climate change talks. We'll be broadcasting there live for the following 2 weeks.